Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Leadership Void podcast. I'm Enrique and my co-host Vince with another special guest. And I'm excited about this one, Vince, because we hear the name, but what they do is tremendous. And I'm going to let Vince introduce.
Yes, indeed. We're back on the road here in November, and we are in DC, the heart of Georgetown. So speaking with Meghan Ogilvie, which is the CEO of the Mighty Dog Tag Inc. So very excited to have you. I am a former cohort member and fellow of Dog Tag, and so excited. First, let's just turn it to Meghan. Tell us about you.
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much for having me, Enrique and Vince. I've had the opportunity of listening to the podcast, and I think it's always fascinating. I think one thing about leadership is that it's always changing, and you always get to learn from others. So I am the CEO for Dog Tag. I joined in 2012 as the first employee. And I think my first title was general manager because I generally just managed things. There was an idea, it was a concept, and we didn't have a lot going on. And so here we are today, and in November of 2020 with our 12th cohort about to graduate, 13th starting in January, and it's just been this amazing journey and evolution of our organization as well as myself. I'm also a military kid. My father served for 26 years in the Marine Corps. My sister served for 6 years in the Marine Corps, and my mom served for all of it. So I was raised with, whether I knew it as a child or not, I was definitely raised with very specific values that, as I grew up and grew into my own leadership capabilities, recognizing what my values are, and then allowing those to really help me make strategic and leadership decisions along the way. So I definitely credit the military family and the military, core values as part of the backbone of how I learned and how I've grown.
That's outstanding. I love the family military culture. Vince and I grew up literally with the military. Our children grew up around that environment, and there's some strength that is built from a family structure that way, not only because the service member, right, they bring that kind of strength to it, but also because there are things that are developed in a military family that isn't in a normal day-to-day community family. And I'm so excited to hear about what you're doing with Dog Tag Inc. and all the things that you're involved with. So take a couple of moments and talk to us about that.
So Dog Tag was launched in 2014. It was started by Father Richard Curry and Connie Milstein. Two leaders that both worked with individuals across the different platforms of really empowering them to find their voice and find purpose. They also had a joined passion for baking. So Father Curry was a baker. Connie actually ran her own general and baking store in New York. But both of those dedications utilized people to come into the program and really learn different skill sets. And I saw, what happens when you can enable someone with tools, resources in a community, and what happens for the sustainable future of them moving forward and moving on. Our organization was created. We run a Dog Tag bakery. It's right in the heart of Georgetown, and it's right on Gray Street, 3206 Gray Street. And that bakery really serves our program. So what we do is we recruit veterans that have service-connected disabilities, military spouses, and military caregivers. They come into our program for 5 months, where we work with partners like Georgetown University. So for 5 months, you'll go through various courses to graduate with a certificate in business administration from Georgetown University. So a tangible result. So no matter what, if you come in and do the hard work, you will leave with that certificate. But we recognize that that's just a baseline. That's an academic side of business. And, the hardest thing about running a business or working within one is just navigating it, right? And so what we do is we use our whole organization as that platform to teach. So 6 hours a week, our fellows rotate through all different areas of our organization. So from front of house to back of house, communications, marketing, fundraising, HR, catering, wholesale. Our fellows get to work with our staff and our teammates just to understand all the necessities of not just ordering products, but actually the strategies behind it and how you build a team to actually execute it. We then bring in our partners we call learning labs, and that's anything from entrepreneurs to small business owners to corporations. And the whole goal of that is, if you can see it, you can be it. And what we've really recognized with our fellowship and our program is that, two of the most consistent issues that our service members and families are going through is during transition, especially, is isolation, and lack of purpose or community. And so our whole goal is, how do we bring that community to them, right? How do we start building that community, and how do we start rebuilding what does purpose mean? And so when we bring in our partners across the different platforms, they're able to see all the different opportunities that are out there, and recognize that there's more than just government contracting or whatever it might be, but it gives them a platform to actually discover that and start testing it out, but build that network. What we've also really recognized is that wellness is everything. Health is wealth. And so what we've built in is actually, even from this recent cohort, we dedicate every Monday morning to a whole wellness session. That can be anything from journaling to yoga to reflection to mindfulness. And the whole goal is recognizing that you're on a journey. And you can have the best education, you can have the best job, you can have the best network, but if your health isn't where it needs to be, and you haven't taken the time to recognize that you are going through a journey, that it's kind of a moot point, right? You're not going to be able to recognize the opportunities ahead of you, and the whole time you're going to be wondering, why am I still struggling with this? And so wellness is a key component of our program. So after 5 months, you've gone through a Georgetown certificate program, you've worked within a business that's thriving, you built a network. At the same time, you've really, kind of rebuilt yourself. And not that it was broken before, but now there's a new normal, right? And how do you redefine what your values are today? How do you redefine what purpose now means as you move forward and move on? And our goal is about sustainability. Let's give individuals tools and resources they can take with them. So they're not reliant just on a dog tag program or any program out there, that they can start, building up themselves and moving on and moving forward. And that's what we want. Success for us is what success is defined by each individual. So if writing and poetry is success to you, then that's success to us. If starting a business is success to you, let's go for it. And all we do is help set that platform up and help be part of that journey forward.
So yes, Meghan, thank you for sharing. So I had the opportunity to go there through this transformational holistic process back in 2017. And we fortunately had it face-to-face, which I enjoyed. And now, knowing the pandemic has hit and has probably forced, just like other businesses, leaders spoke about going onto a virtual platform. So how's Dog Tag actually holding up, and what are you all currently doing in this new setting?
Absolutely. So, sometimes the only way through something is through. And that was very much our mentality, is recognizing we were in the middle of a cohort. They were going on spring break. We have a 1 week break in between. And we were about to have a board meeting. Our board meeting was really going to focus on our goal of expansion and driving our program outside the DC area. So you can imagine the pivot and the conversation, how it changed so drastically to be more of a phased approach of how we're going to handle COVID, both programmatically and from the bakery standpoint. So what we did is, within a week, we pivoted our entire program that was 100% in person to be 100% virtual. We then looked at our bakery, and then we kind of had to build a plan out of sustainable and dropping of hours, operations status. We ended up closing the bakery for 2 months, even while the fellowship was running, which meant rotations were being done from home by my teammates and staff, while the fellows were also at home. Again, I think, you could sit there, what are you supposed to do? Like, take your basketball, go home and cry. I mean, you kind of, this is like kind of forcing yourself to adapt and innovate. And so we recognized, okay, let's see how this works. So we monitored the program to really ensure that it was still having the impact. And we had to really be careful and diligent about the implications of virtual, knowing that, children are at home, both parents are at home, sometimes only one parent's at home. There's a variety of backgrounds in socioeconomics, but also just realizing, like, we're in a pandemic. And then obviously when George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd happened, that also forced not only our organization to have a deep look at ourselves, but also ensure that we're providing a platform for not only our fellows and our alumni, but for our team to really kind of come together and have these open discussions where, I'm used to leading them, I'm used to facilitating them, and in this one, it was really about listening. And so we continue to do that, but this has been a challenge across all platforms. I mean, we're trying to maintain payroll, we're trying to maintain team morale, we're trying to run a fellowship program. But I think this is also when you find out, the strength of your team and the quality of their capabilities and ability to manage and also be flexible at the same time. So where we are today is that, we ended up shutting down for the bakery for 2 months. And then, went from like March 14th, limiting hours, to March 30th closed. Our fellowship literally went 100% online, kept it from 9 to 4 every day, Monday through Thursday. Where we are today, we've launched cohort 12, 100% virtual. You have to reestablish expectations, and you have to really, how do we actually make sure we're setting up the right expectations of what we define as successful or impactful, but also recognize that we have to make some changes. So we added the wellness component because we recognize that connectivity is so essential right now. Even if the program's only goal was to make sure that people were checked in on every day, that would, in the sense of that was so necessary, not just for also our fellows, but for our team. And so we've also realized, during this time of virtual, you have to schedule everything. You have to schedule fun. You have to schedule interactions. So Vince knows this, but we have the bakeries in the below the building, the ground floor, I'm sorry, and then the second floor is the classroom. But behind the classroom are offices, and then also a second kitchen. So it's like a tree house. You can be downstairs getting a coffee and a croissant, and above you is like 30 people. And guess what? There's one bathroom, right? And so this is like kind of our joke, but like we miss waiting in line, like the bathroom line to check in on people. Like you're waiting in line, you're like, hey, what's up, Vince? Like, what's been going on? How's everything? How's your weekend? But like, those are those unintentional times where people actually start building relationships. And right now we don't have that opportunity. So we actually have to force it essentially, or at least schedule it. So we started doing morning coffees with our fellows. We started just doing, again, there's like wellness components that we all participate in, just trying to add some social aspects to it as well. So right now we're running our program 100% virtually. Our bakery has, we're operating probably about 60% right now, what we usually did. And even with that, our online platform is almost doubled. If not getting up, higher than that, because you recognize that although retail is our bread and butter, no pun intended, but like that's where the community comes in to participate and be part of who we are. We also realizing that like that's just not where our country is, or with comfortability and socialization. So our online platform is that, well, what do you need? Enrique, if you haven't talked to your teammates in forever, what would you? So we actually, our fellows created AirDrop. Right, it was after World War II. The airdrops that were brought, and it's a cookie, a brownie, and a macaroon. And the goal is, it's like a very simple thing. You can airdrop, and it's like $9 or something. And so you ship it to your team, and then when you have your team meeting on Wednesday morning, everyone opens up the box. You guys are having coffee, and you're having a cookie, and the same thing all together. Right, so it's like this trying to create a new normal, knowing that it's different, and it's okay that it's different. And so I think that's been the evolution of our program too, is that, well, I don't want it to be virtual. And it's like, I have to get over that, right? And the point is this, we're gonna build the most phenomenal virtual program until we don't need it to be 100% virtual. And then we're gonna build the best hybrid program. But you can't live in this world of pre-COVID anymore. You have to just operate and figure out the best way of operating, the most impactful, the most effective. And I think, that's challenging, right? Because as a leader, you're like, well, what's the timeline? What's my budget? And you're like, we don't know what the budget's going to be. We don't know what the timeline is. And so you're kind of like, okay. And, we've had more phased approaches than I've ever had in my life. We've now a roadmap versus a timeline, because timing is really dictated by the external factors that force us to make decisions. And so, again, it's been fascinating, the ability of seeing our team innovate and the perseverance of our team. And again, that's what makes me the most proud of really seeing, when tough times happen, how quickly your team is ready to be like, we got this, we're all in this together, and let's pivot.
I absolutely love all of that. And in my head over here, I'm like, cohort 13, here I come. But it's marvelous. And what when I'm listening to you and you're talking about, and we did this and we did that, the airdrop stuff, it just blew my mind, because it's wonderful to take a piece of history bring it to today, and it's still effective, right? Because that's really what leaders do. They bring in what's already been and then make it effective for you at the moment. And so you talked about timelines and things like that. So tell us a little bit about maybe somewhere where Dog Tag Inc. is going here in the next foreseeable future. I know we're all on a moment's notice shift, right? So it's everywhere. But what do you see in your mind here for the next let's say a year?
Sure. It's just fascinating because I think we spent the first, from March until September, even maybe August, kind of just reacting, right? And it's like, well, how this is only gonna be another month or so, right? And I think that's the hard part. And so it's been this challenge of kind of like, when do you come up for air and start looking forward versus coming up for like air and just continuing to react. And I think the goal is to, build in the capability of being proactive, but the challenge is like, you just can't make it with concrete, right? You have to make it with rubber because you have to be flexible no matter what you plan. And so what I see for us is I see us, really perfecting the virtual model for our fellowship. I see us really going through this aggressive approach of building up and innovating our bakery that has a stronger online presence and capability of we're shipping cakes now, but our fellows see all of this, by the way. Like, it wasn't like, hey, here's this perfect picture. They're like, chaos, right? I mean, that's the point of our program, though. It's the reality check. And we're not scared to share that, right? And so our next year plan is really that. How do we look at our program? How do we build the efficiencies? Cohort 13 starts in January. We're going to plan to be virtual 100%. And then how do we build that to be effective and innovative? And I keep using that word because, it also associates with challenges. When you have challenges, what do? You have to pivot. You have to innovate. You have to think differently. So how do we build the best online program? And then as we get more information about maybe the possibility of opening up or the possibilities of change, then we can actually then start, really working towards this hybrid model of in-person and virtual. Our goal is that we want to continue to grow our program and we want to continue to have impact in the community that we're so fortunate to serve. And we're going to only do that as long as we can, as long as we're still relevant. And so I think what we're also going to look at is continue to be really monitoring, the military, the military kind of spouse and caregiver kind of community, and just seeing what are the needs now. And it's definitely not mission creep. And I think we have to be really careful because that's happening in a lot of places, right? There's a bit of like, oh, well, we'll do this now because, and it's like you kind of start losing your essence, right? We're an in-person, we want to be back in person, but we can't do it now, so we're going to pivot it and we're going to find ways to build that in. But if the world starts opening back up in some fashion, or we can get rapid testing done that can allow the economy to get back before a vaccine happens, then let's look at efficiencies, right? Our mock interview day is an amazing day. We bring in about 15 companies. Each fellow gets, 15, 20-minute interview. It's everything from Boeing to Deloitte to Starbucks to Amazon to World Voodoo Warrior Project. I mean, Elizabeth Dole Foundation, we have nonprofits, but we're now finding like that actually might be more efficiently done virtually, right? Because it just makes it easier on the corporations and the companies, but it also might be the wave of how we're interviewing for the next year to 2 years to 3 years virtually, right? So we're seeing efficiencies in a variety of ways. And so the goal is let's build towards that. You have to like plant a flag at one point and say, this is the way we're headed. Like I said, it has to have some rubber to it, not just concrete, because you need to be able to lead people towards something. And I think that's the challenge. We're leading toward, my goal and our goal as a team is that we're leading it towards, perfecting the virtual model and recognizing that's our model right now. And it's not by force, it's by, right now it's because we can build it to be effective and impactful. It's, and then as more information comes, we'll just have to pivot. And we'll say, okay, let's start planning for the future. Our goal is to expand, and it's not for the sake of expansion. Our goal is to say, how can we go out into our community and continue to serve in areas that, right now we're able to have fellows from all over the country. We had that before, But the difficulty part is that you would have to move to Washington, D.C. for 5 months. And that was something we said, listen, that's, we were trying to find a partner to help support that. But at the end of the day, this is the reality of kind of the transition. You might have to move for a job that we provide a stipend of $1,400 a month. Like our goals, it's at no cost for the fellowship, but now virtually we can have more people participate in our program from different parts of the country. We're at 16 fellows. We're kind of in a good place with that. Our goal isn't to double that just because it's virtual. That isn't necessarily, we want to still keep this cohesiveness, this cohort mentality, this cohort model, this community-based, right? And so that's what we're really working through right now, is making sure that we can still have the core like values and essentials of what makes the program so special, but also think about, for growth purposes, what does that look like to pilot? If we wanted to pilot our program somewhere else, you kind of work backwards from there. So what other areas of our organization or program need to be changed to be more malleable, to be able to do that in a fashion that's timely and also impactful. So I think I answered it and I didn't answer it. Our goals to perfect our model and work towards that. And we do want to grow our capability of having more fellows in the fellowship program by other locations.
Yes, Megan, and what resonates with me is, quality versus quantity, right? You definitely continue this quality program as I've seen it evolve from cohort 5 to now cohort 12 and there and beyond. I love what you say about making it with rubber, not concrete. That's amazing analogy. And one thing about the program, which was the learning labs itself, we had opportunity to speak to our business owners and entrepreneurs about, and here we go into their leadership lessons, and to our point, to leadership voice, what are they missing? And we have the opportunity today, right now, to speak about your leadership journey. So let's dive right into that and talk about what professional development areas did you work on to improve your capabilities as a leader?
It's a great question. And I think, I think there's sometimes experiences are that education, right? I believe that education and academia is power. I believe, that naturally enables you with tools to be able to move forward. But I think also experience can sometimes be just as good, if not more effective. I've always been, throw me to the lions kind of mentality. And hopefully I'll come back, head of the pack. But if anything, I'll learn and, while being thrown in there. So at a young age, I played sports, which played to this day, I think it's how I've built my mentality of leadership and how I operate. I played, soccer throughout my high school. Throughout high school, I played in college. I ended up being the captain of my team starting like spring of my sophomore year at Richmond. We went to the Sweet 16. After that, I played abroad, and sports played a really strong role in how I think about building a team. And I think it's also about, a leadership, because the goal is that everyone has a role to play, and that role is significant, and that role has respect and responsibility. And you treat everyone as you want to be treated, in the sense of, if we're playing on a field right now and we get scored on, it's not the keeper's fault, right? It's not the goalkeeper's fault. There's 10 other people on that field that should have done something to get before I got to that goal, right? And it's how I think about it with even our own organization today. If there's a fault that happens, it's not on one person, right? There was a breakdown of communication, leadership, or whatever it might be that got us to that point. So I think that's where, you have to, especially during this time of COVID, we said, like, we're all in this together. We had to unfortunately furlough our part-timers that were mostly students. We sat down with them and had a conversation, like, where are you now? What are you doing? Do you have another job? Are you, and I think, like, and then we were able to keep all of our full-timers on payroll the whole time, but we constantly kept that communication, because I believe, and our board believed when I had that board meeting in March, it said, I can't say we're all in this together if we're not, right? I can't say we're all in this together and then lay people off because the bakery's closed, right? But what happens if the program has to shut down? You know what I mean? Like, this all works because we all work on this together. And that I think really is built by, again, a lot of strong teamwork in my childhood of like just growing up being on a team. Now, I think the evolution of my own leadership is, confidence is one thing too, that is the imposter syndrome is so very real. And I think that's real for a lot of individuals. I think for me, joining Dog Tag, it was, I was driven to do it because it's like my stomach, my gut was like, this is awesome. It's terrifying. There's very little structure. You're leaving. I worked in New York in finance. For 6 years, I built a network and a community, and I was kind of had this opportunity to kind of be go on the trading desk. And I was like, I don't want that life, right? It was a values base. I don't want that life. And when I heard about Father Curry and I met him, I convinced him to hire me. And, during that time, it was kind of like, I'm just going to be a student, right, of Father Curry. And I kind of feel like I'm continuously a student. And I think you have to continuously be curious, right? You have to ask questions. And if you're scared to ask the questions, then you have to ask why you're scared of that question. And so I think as I joined Dog Tag, I learned so much from Father Curry. When Connie came on, I learned so much from them. But in 2017 or 2016, I applied for a program called the Presidential Leadership Scholar Program. I have, from an academic standpoint, I have my bachelor's in sociology from the University of Richmond. That's it. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I don't have an MBA. I don't have a master. I don't have, my academic background. And I think it's because I didn't see it as a tool. I saw it as like, oh, it'd be, it's good on paper, but it's money I'm to spend. And I don't know as a tool right now if I need that, right? And when I saw the Presidential Leadership Scholars, I was like, there's so many tools here, right? First of all, I'll be with 59 other leaders in different ways. Second of all, you're going to learn from the presidents of like the variety of leadership styles and impacts and decision making and how they approached it. And so I applied, and I was really fortunate that I actually got in. And so that was also a turning point for me, is that I sat next to one of these guys who I'm friends with now. He's actually in the veteran space. And I was like, man, I can't believe I got into this. And he said, really? I thought I should. I was like, that's fascinating. And it's like, and what I started realizing is that there's value in humility. There's value in selflessness and all of that, but it also becomes a crutch, or it also becomes a negative. I kind of realized for the first time, like the humbleness is actually becoming a problem, because it's like I'm not stepping up for my team, right? I'm not you're right, I should be in this program, or, like, oh, Dog Tag's doing something. Well, yeah, we're hanging in there. It's like, no, we're doing really well. And it's almost like I wasn't leaning into it. I wasn't stepping into my role. I wasn't allowing myself to actually take on, like, with that does come, responsibility, but it was also like, I'm the CEO. I need to own that role. And I became CEO in 2015 in January. Father Curry passed away in December of 2015. So we had a year together kind of in that transition. And then 2016, I really had to own it. And I was scared, right? And I think I was almost more fearful of making the wrong decision, that it didn't allow me sometimes to just make decisions. It was analysis paralysis. So PLS really kind of gave me this confidence of saying, I'm getting more tools, I'm building this network. And the network was like, I'm navigating this, how'd you do that? And it wasn't about like the people, it was about the lessons learned. And I was able to take from them. And I think that program was pivotal in allowing me to actually feel confident that I know that I can lead, but also be confident that it's okay to say that. And like, I don't have to constantly downplay myself or downplay our work to be concerned that people are going to think that it's anything less than the best it should be. So that was really pivotal for me. And so, I would say my leadership has continued to evolve. I have mentors in a variety of ways. I have strategic mentors. I have peers that are mentors. And then I have obviously, different partners in the space that I really rely on for feedback, in the sense of asking, I'm approaching it this way. What's your reaction? So, I think my natural way of approaching leadership is, is from this ability of recognizing like the team is everything, but the captain needs to be the captain, right? The CEO needs to own that. And I can only do that with the confidence of knowing that I have a good support system around me to help balance that out and help, bounce ideas off and learn from that as well. So hopefully I kind of got to an answer there.
No, that's wonderful. And not only did you share areas where you are developing and learning, but you also shared a lot of great information for emerging leaders, and I appreciate that. And so, folks, if you're an emerging leader, get a hold of those tips, because that's really what's going to make a difference in what you do as a leader and how you face the next level of your leadership. Talking about next levels, right? We're always thinking about how do we address challenges? How do we approach these things that make us want to consider pivoting and another direction? How do you face challenges, and how can others learn to face challenges?
I think part of and it depends on what and kind of what the scenario is, but one, listening is everything. I think it's also knowing your team. And I think you have to understand who's on your team. Everyone operates differently, right? People find recognition in different ways. Some people like to be called out. Some people hate it, right? Some people like to present. Some people just, are super happy giving you the presentation for you to do. And so I think like part of what my whole process has been is that how do I really get to know and understand my team so I can best support them? And so when challenges arise, the goal is that I already have a good pulse, I would say, or a good understanding of, okay, let's look at the situation. Let's look about like that's the way of approaching it. And then how do you give responsibility with authority to your team? And I think that's one of the biggest things, that people have responsibility, but they don't always have the authority to make the decision. And so I think that's been part of my growth pattern, as like, how do I recognize that I don't need to be everything. Actually, that would be massively inefficient, right? And also I would be setting myself up for failure. So how do when you're building a team and you look for that, how do you look for strengths that you don't have and celebrate that, right? How do you make sure that you understand that when you bring people onto the team, I want them to be the best. I will micromanage to ensure that they onboard well and they understand the mission. But once you're ready to roll, I need you to be the best version of this. I need you to be what you're passionate about. I need you to roll with it and build it and grow it and challenge it. And so when challenges happen, I think that's what you have to recognize. It's like, okay, let's look at the situation. Who does it affect? How does it affect us? Let's, understand from people's different perspectives of where they see, an opportunity or where we see how to approach it. And then, at the end of the day, it's your, as a leader, it's your responsibility to take all that information and then make the decisions. I think some people have this misconception of leadership. I think it's not like a CEO. Leadership can be across the board. Leadership is at every level, at every role. And I think that's, as a leader, it's not like I need to be a dictator, right? I don't have to have the best ideas in the room. I just have to be able to take the responsibility of recognizing like the different ideas, bringing them together, and then making a decision. Just because you make a suggestion doesn't mean I take it, and vice versa. Just because you make a suggestion, that might be it. We might just totally roll with that idea and go. And so I think that's the challenge, is that, when you get to know your team and you get to know, the different backgrounds or different ways of operating, that's also, it's the challenge, right? Because I know everybody else and everyone's kind of operating in their own silo at times. And so I think it's at the leadership level, you have to be able to take all the different perspectives and understand why and where they're coming from, and then make a decision on what's the best, mode of operating going forward. Because, one decision has the capability of affecting everyone differently. And so you have to take that into consideration. And then I think also a challenge is you have to, and this is the hard part, and this has been a challenging growth for me, you have to really communicate it well. You have to over communicate in times of trouble or in times of challenges. And you cannot make assumptions, because if you don't, people, as soon as people are making assumptions, you've lost control. And it's not about control, but you've lost the ability to maintain, everyone's on the same page. And it's a challenge. When COVID hit, it was like, like I was trying to send out emails like 3 times a week just for all staff. But my team was the one that was like, Meghan, we need to have a stronger level of communication. People are making, and again, that's where I was learning from it. I was like, okay, I didn't, I just thought people understood that, this is the process. Like, no, people really, especially right now, need to know, do they still have a job? And I'm like, well, of course they have. Like, and again, as a leader, you're also navigating like forward thinking. I'm trying to see boulders ahead of me. And so one of my colleagues is like, you need to be more clear about this, because if I'm questioning it, think about, the manager or the coordinator or the supervisor. And so that has been something that I'm trying to get better at. Because it's not that I don't want to communicate. It's just that I want to make sure I do it well. And if anything, that's been one of the biggest lesson learned, especially with the basically civil rights movement we're going through and social injustice, is that you don't have to have the perfect answer. You just have to make sure there's progress. And I think that's been something, is that I can point out the inefficiencies probably much faster than anyone else could. But the goal is that if you sit there and wait to build the perfect plan across the board, even in times of challenging, if you try to say, let's wait a little bit longer until this is perfect, you're never going to execute it. It's just because perfect doesn't really exist. Hindsight's 20/20 for a reason. All you can do is make the best decision in that situation at that time with the information you have. Maya Angelou has that quote, basically do the best that you can. And as soon as you learn you can do better, do better. And so that's been kind of my approach. And it's also, as a leader, it helps me sleep better at night. And it's because you kind of have to give yourself, when we approach, how do we have conversations about systemic racism and social injustice? You just have to have them, right? And I'm not saying we do it perfectly, but you just have to have them, right? We have to just have the conversation and learn that I might say something and someone says, I don't think you realize, but when you said that, it actually, to me, this is how I hear it. And that's the whole point, I think, in challenges too. Like, it's about progress. And I could step back and say, I really appreciate you saying that, right? And owning it. And I think that's kind of where we are today. But in challenges in general, that is like almost the same approach. You really just you can't live in the world of fear. You just have to know that you're going to make the best decision. And that was what I had to kind of convince our team, and not convince, but like, I had to keep reassuring, we're going to make decisions on values. We're going to be like, what is best for the team, what keeps everyone safe, healthy, and connected, right? Like, I want you to know we will make these decisions with everyone at mind, and ensuring that that's how we make these decisions. And it's challenging, right? Because you have to continue to communicate that to ensure your team understands that and also believes it. But you have to do, then the hardest part is you have to act with that, right? But like I said, like, the best decision today might be the wrong decision 2 weeks later. And that's the hardest part, right? My biggest fear is letting people down ever. Or my biggest fear is that any one of our teammates, my colleagues, doesn't feel seen, heard, or valued in our organization. And that would be a massive failure on my part and my leadership. And so, my continuous goal is to ensure that that doesn't happen, essentially, but that we're also not, acting in fear. We're acting in hope as well.
Yes, and dealing with challenges, you shared a lot of strategies there, which is very important. Started out with listening, and obviously communication rises to the top, not just one directional, but multi-directional, right? And not being the smartest person in the room, and actually attribute all ideas to come to the table as one, and really be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So there's a lot of strategies, folks, that Meghan shared with you. So I would love you to leave us with what motto drives you, or what motto sticks with you that you like to share with folks, and how do people reach out to you or the Dog Tag Inc. program?
I might have already used it. Again, it's just been very apropos, the Maya Angelou quote of, do the best you can. And as soon as you realize you can do better, do better. And I think that it gives, I think it gives, there's grace in that, I'm going to do everything with, with values and the best intentions. But at the end of the day, I might be, that might not have been the right call, or, and I have to give grace to both. I have to give grace to myself. And it's also asking people to give me grace in that space too. And I, in return, will do that, right? Act with compassion and empathy and give grace to others as long as we know we're making decisions with the best intentions at mind. If we fail, we fail, we fail daring greatly, essentially. And so I really, it's kind of been something that I need to say to myself, because otherwise I'm just holding it so tightly. I'm making every decision so tightly that I'm losing oxygen, right? I'm losing the capability of actually performing. And so I just tell myself, like, keep doing it, best intentions, and as soon as you can do it better, across the board. So, and then to reach out to me, LinkedIn is always the best, to be honest with you. It's a great professional platform. It's a great way to connect online and then be able to send messages. And I think from there, if there's an opportunity of connecting, we can share information from there. But LinkedIn is great. I try to be as active as I can on that as well.
Wonderful to hear. And we'll provide that as part of the video, all the context, so that they can get a hold of you. Meghan, it's been such a pleasure to share this space and this time with you. I am so flabbergasted at times of all that you have done, all that you continue to do with Dog Tag Inc. I already told you I'm a fan, so expect a conversation with me. But it's wonderful to know that we have fellow citizens, fellow veteran family members doing great things for the community and for the veteran community all at once. And so I applaud your efforts and all the things that you have done. And I wish you all success continuously. Folks, if you want to get a hold of Meghan, we'll provide that. If you want to get a hold of us, the leadership void at gmail.com is where you contact us. And, Vince has his little, his shirt on, proudly representing. And so we would love to do that for you. If you want to send us those things, we love drinking out of coffee mugs because that's what we do. And we'll proudly display it. So get a hold of us. If you have some leadership topics you would like for us to cover, if you have a leader out there that's doing great things in the veteran community and representing well, send them our way. We'll contact them and curate all that information and address it appropriately. Now, we're heading into a great, time in our history and our calendar, right? Veterans Day is coming up, and I'm gonna let Vince address that.
Yes, but first I want to say again to Meghan, thank you for being here. Truly living and actions of the legacy of Father Curry. So I really appreciate you and everything you do for veterans, spouses, and caregivers and the community. So thank you, Meghan, for being here. And next week is November 11th, which is Veterans Day. We have a very special edition with everyone from all 5 branches, the Air Force, the Army, the Marines, the Navy, and the Coast Guard. 5 great leaders, 5 great females, going to speak to you all on a panel about Veterans Day, their journey, what they have in store, their lessons learned, their tips. So great leaders on Veterans Day. Please tune in. It's going to be a memorable episode. We hope you will not take off time, but take time to put into your calendar to listen on Veterans Day. Thank you again, Megan. Next week, Veterans Day. For everybody out there, we appreciate you.
Thank you, Enrique. Thank you, Vince.